Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers of Vishuddha Manthan for inviting me to this beautiful workshop. It is truly a pleasure to interact with the students, research scholars, faculty members, and all the aspiring researchers present here who are really interested in improving their research and publication skills. So today, we are going to discuss a topic that is extremely relevant in the modern research environment and the biggest question, how to write a complete research paper and effectively use these artificial intelligence tools throughout the journey. You see, over the last few years, I have interacted with many students and young researchers. One question that I have always heard is, Sir, I have completed my work, but I do not know how to write a paper. Others have often asked that, how do I start a literature review? Or can AI help me to write a manuscript? So you see, these are very important questions, and today's workshop is designed to address these questions in a very practical manner. So before we begin discussing specific tools and techniques, I want to emphasize one very important point. You see, artificial intelligence is not replacing the researchers. However, it is helping the researchers to become more efficient. This is the point that we have to understand. You see, the creativity, the critical thinking, the scientific judgment, and originality must always come from the researcher. And AI is simply a powerful assistant that can help save us our time and improve the productivity. So this is the first important point that we have to keep in mind, that AI is not replacing the researchers, but it is helping the researchers to get a better research output. So in this slide, we'll see, I'll try to provide a broader overview of how AI is transforming research and scholarly writing. We see that artificial intelligence has fundamentally changed the way research is conducted. Even a few years ago, conducting a literature review required searching hundreds of papers manually. We had to download the articles, organizing the references, taking notes, and trying to identify patterns across studies. Today, many of these tasks can be completed much faster with the help of these AI tools. For example, you see AI can assist in identifying relevant publications, summarizing large volumes of literature, organizing references, improving the manuscript structure, and even suggesting areas where the research gaps may exist. But it is very important to understand that these tools should support our work rather than replace our intellectual contribution. We have to back ourselves for the total work, and we cannot totally depend on these AI tools for obvious. See, as researchers, our responsibility is to ask very meaningful questions. We have to interpret the evidence correctly and develop original ideas. AI can help us process information more efficiently, but it cannot replace scientific reasoning. So now that we understand the role of AI in modern research, the next big question that comes, where does every good research project begin? So first comes the research problem. In my experience, I feel that one of the most common reasons why research projects fail is because the research problem was not clearly defined from the beginning. Many students, they are very eager to start the experiments or collect the data, but they spend very little time thinking about the actual problem they want to solve. Every successful research paper begins with a well-defined topic. A good topic is very, very important. It should be focused, it should be relevant, and it should be capable of contributing something new to the existing body of knowledge. So how can we identify it? So one of the best way to identify this is by finding the gap in the literature. So this is where the literature review becomes very important. A literature review, you see, is not simply a collection of papers. Rather, this is a process in which we attempt to understand what has already been discovered, what remains uncertain, and where opportunities for new contributions exist. Once we identify those gaps, we can formulate the research question in a better way. So these questions become the foundation of the entire study. They guide our methodology, they try to influence our data collection, and ultimately determine the direction of our conclusions. A strong research question leads to a strong research paper. Once we have identified this research problem and formulated our research questions, the next step is deciding how we'll answer those questions. So now this brings us to the methodology. So you see, methodology is often described as the backbone of a research study. It explains exactly how the research was conducted and allows other researchers to evaluate the reliability of these findings. So whenever I review manuscripts, one of the first sections I try to examine carefully is the methodology section. See, even if the results appear interesting, weak methodology can undermine the credibility of the entire study. So you see, a good methodology is very important. It should be clearly defining the scope of the research, what exactly we are trying to finding out. What are the objectives of this work and what are the different variables that have been used? What type of study we are trying to conduct? So all these points, they're very, very essential to conduct a proper research. See, researchers, they must also determine whether, their study is qualitative, quantitative, or it's a combination of both approaches. So this is a very important point. So another important aspect of the methodology is selecting appropriate information sources. So we have modern researchers, they have access to databases such as Google Scholar, we know about PubMed, we know about Scopus, Web of Science, JSTOR. So however, finding information is not enough. We must also evaluate them very carefully, and we have to know how these sources are particularly useful to us. See, when we talk about this literature review, it serves the several purposes to us. It helps us understand the current state of the knowledge. We try to identify the major themes, discover the research gaps, and justify why our study is necessary. Traditionally, conducting a literature review was an extremely time consuming process. You see, researchers, they had to go through several websites, they had to download the papers, so they had to spend weeks or months collecting or reading these papers. But today, you see, these AI powered tools, they have significantly accelerated this process. So we have several tools to name. We have Semantic Scholar, we have Elicit, we have Research Rabbit, Connected Papers, and several consensus. These are all helping the researchers discover the relevant publications, updated publications, and then we can also explore the different citation networks and quickly understand the major findings in a field. You see, for example, uh, instead of manually searching hundreds of articles, we can now use Elicit to identify highly relevant papers and obtain concise summaries. Similarly, Research Rabbit is there, which helps us to visualize the relationships between the authors and the studies. It helps us identify the influential work within a research domain. But what I feel, that AI, it can assist in searching and summarizing, but somewhere it won't be able to replace critical evaluation. Researchers, as a researcher, we still need to read the key points. We need to verify the information, and we have to develop our own interpretation and evidence. So the goal of the literature review is not merely to collect information. We have to understand the scientific conversation and identify where our research can contribute something meaningful. See, when we are doing a research work, our first question is how this research is going to benefit the society. You see, when you answer a very good research question, then the chances of getting it published increases. So we have to think accordingly that how big solution we are trying to provide by doing this particular research. So this is a very big and important question that we answer. So you see, now there are several key phases in which we try to identify and gather this data. So one of the biggest misconceptions about AI is that people think it is only useful for writing text. In reality, AI can support researchers throughout the publication process. See, I have tried to divide this modern research workflow into three major stages. The first stage, we can see that literature search and synthesis. So this is where researchers, they spend a considerable amount of time trying to identify the relevant publications, understanding the existing knowledge, and recognizing the gaps in the literature. So AI tools can significantly reduce this time required for this stage and help us locate these relevant papers, summarize the findings, and identify the common themes across the multiple studies. Then we talk about drafting and structuring. Once we understand the literature, we need to organize our thoughts into a logical manuscript structure. AI tools can help generate outlines, suggest section organization, and provide writing frameworks and make the drafting process more efficient. And finally, you see the editing and refinement. Even experienced researchers, they rarely produce a perfect first draft. So these AI tools, they can help us improve the sentence clarity, grammar, the readability, and overall coherence. But you have to remember that it is very important that editing should never be completely delegated to AI. The researcher must always review the final content to ensure that scientific accuracy and consistency. So you see, if we think about the research journey as a long road, AI can assist us at every stage of that journey, but the researcher still remains the driver. So now, one of the most important question that we'll now head to is how do we actually communicate with AI effectively? The answer lies in prompt engineering. You see, what types of questions we ask the AI, and accordingly, the answers we'll be getting. So the more specific, the more in-depth question we ask, in the same manner, it will generate the results. So many researchers, they become disappointed with AI because they ask vague question and they receive vague answers. The quality of AI output is directly related to the quality of the prompt. You see, if I ask an AI system, tell me about cancer, the response will likely be broad and generic. But if I ask, summarize recent advances in HER2 targeted therapeutics for the treatment resistant of breast cancer, and then we are trying to identify major research gaps reported after 2022, if I try and frame a question like this, the response become much more focused and useful. So you see, this is where the prompt engineering has become an important uh, criteria, where the prompt becomes, the prompt that we ask becomes very important. So when we are conducting a literature review, one of the most favorite prompt is summarize the key findings of this topic. This helps create a quick overview of the field before diving deeper into the individual papers. Another essential prompt is, identify the gaps in the current research. This is particularly valuable because many students, they struggle to identify the novel research questions. So you see, AI can help highlight areas where the evidence is limited, contradictory, or totally incomplete. A third useful prompt you can see is compare methodologies across these studies. So this allows researchers to evaluate how different groups have approached similar questions and identify methodological strengths and weaknesses. But I always emphasize that AI generated outputs should be consistent, and it should be considered a starting point rather than a final answer. We should use AI to guide our exploration, but always verify the important information using the original publications. So once we have gathered the sufficient information from the literature, the next challenge is writing the manuscript. So this is where drafting prompts become extremely useful. One of the most difficult sections for many researchers, is the introduction. Students often know the science, but they often struggle to organize it into a very compelling narrative. So AI can help us by generating an initial framework. For example, I might ask AI to write an introduction covering the historical background, current understanding, what are the major research gaps and scientific and significance of a particular topic. So see, I am not asking AI to write the entire paper. Instead, I am asking it to create a structure that I can refine using my own knowledge and interpretation. Similarly, AI can assist in writing the discussion section. The discussion is often the most challenging part, of a manuscript because it requires critical thinking. Researchers must compare the findings, explain the differences between the studies, acknowledge the limitations, and propose the future directions. So AI can help organize these ideas, but the interpretation must always come from the researcher. So this brings us to the most and one of the very important questions. What are the different AI tools that we can use? So it is the biggest challenge is not finding the information. The real challenge is connecting information from the multiple sources. For example, imagine reading 20 different papers on a particular topic. Each paper may provide a small piece of puzzle. AI can help and identify those themes, recurring patterns, contradictions, and emerging trends across these studies. The capability is essentially very useful when we are trying to prepare, review articles. So you see, I often tell my students that a good review paper is not simply a collection of summaries. A good review paper creates a coherent story from multiple sources of evidence. So when you are working on a research, it is very important to understand the background, and often review articles, they help you a lot for this. So what the work that you are particularly doing, you should know a complete background of what that work is. Otherwise, you see, the even if you are doing the work, you are not clear what is the output of the work and how much can it help or benefit the society. So see, among the different AI powered research tools that are available today, a few of them have become very, very important. So you have Semantic Scholar. It's an excellent platform for discovering influential publications. It not only helps identify relevant papers, but it also highlights highly cited work within a field. Then we have Elicit. It has, again, one of the most valuable tools for literature review. It allows researchers to ask research questions in natural language and receive evidence-based responses derived from published literature. Then we have Research Rabbit, offers a completely different experience. We have, instead of presenting information as a list of papers, it creates visual citation networks that helps researchers understand relationships between studies, authors, and research themes. So what I particularly appreciate about these tools is that they allow the researchers to spend less time searching and more time thinking. And ultimately, you can note down these tools. This will help you. You can explore this. So we have to understand the purpose of, AI in research. It is not totally eliminate the human intelligence, but to amplify it. So whenever we are doing or using the AI tools, we have to keep this in mind, that this cannot replace us. We just need to use them in a proper manner, in a validated manner. So whatever we are doing is authenticated, and it helps us improving the quality of the work that we are doing, right? So you see, as we move forward, we'll now discuss the research objectives, methodology. We have data management. So as we have explored how AI can support literature review, information synthesis, and manuscript drafting, so that becomes another important aspect of research planning, defining clear objectives. So in my experience, you see, many research projects, they become confusing because the objectives are not clearly defined from the beginning. See, students often start collecting data before they have fully decided what they want to achieve. As a result, they end up with large amounts of information, but they have no clear direction to go. Whenever I begin a research project, I first ask myself a simple question. What exactly I am trying to accomplish and what exactly I am trying to get by doing this work? The answer to that question becomes the objective of the study. So objectives, you see, they serve as the roadmap to the entire research process. They influence the methodology, determine what data should be collected. It helps us guide the analysis and ultimately shape the conclusions. A research paper with well-defined objectives is usually easier to write because you know very well what you have to write. Every step, see, research paper writing is easy when you know how to write it. You have all the data, and if you follow the steps, it becomes very easy, and one by one you can follow it and complete your manuscript. For example, you see, if I am investigating the role of a particular gene in cancer progression, my objective might be to evaluate its expression patterns. I'll try to identify associate signaling pathways and assess its potential as a therapeutic target. Now, once these objectives are clearly established, every subsequent step becomes much easier. So after defining the objectives, researchers must decide how they are going to investigate those objectives. This brings us to an important distinction in research methodology, qualitative as and quantitative approaches. So you see, many studies, they become confused. Many people, they are always confused that when these terms come, but we have to understand the difference, which is quite straightforward. You see, qualitative research, it focuses on understanding the meanings, experiences, perceptions, and interpretations. It deals with mainly questions like why and how. For example, if we want to understand patient experiences during a healthcare intervention, we may conduct interviews and analyze the recurring themes. Whereas on the other hand, if we talk about the quantitative research, it focuses on numerical measurements and statistical relationships. It deals with questions such as how much, how often, or is there a significant differences. So examples include laboratory experiments, clinical trials, and survey-based studies involving statistical analysis. See, today AI can assist us in both approaches. In qualitative research, AI can help analyze the interview transcripts, identify the recurring themes, and organize textual information more efficiently. Whereas if we talk about quantitative research, AI can help us with statistical modeling, predictive analysis, data visualization, and pattern recognition. However, regardless of the approach, researchers must understand the underlying scientific principles. You see, AI can assist with analysis, but it cannot replace the methodological understanding. Now we have established our objectives and selected an appropriate research approach. Now let us understand a bit about the methodology. So you see, I often tell my students that methodology is one of the most important sections of a research paper because you see, it determines whether other researchers can trust and reproduce the findings. Because whenever we talk about a research, you see, the biggest question that is asked is whether this research can be easily replicated. The word replicated means how easily it can be done again with the process followed that you have mentioned in the paper. So imagine reading a paper that reports extraordinary results but provides very little information about how those results were obtained. So naturally you'd be skeptical. Scientific credibility depends on transparency. You have to be very transparent in what you are doing. You have to report everything, every single piece of evidence that you have. So a good methodology should answer several important questions. First, what was studied? How was the study conducted? Who or what was included? And which tools or techniques were used? And how the data were analyzed. So you see, these questions, they become the backbone of the methodology. So when writing methodology, the researchers should aim to clarity and reproducibility. Another researcher should be easily able to read the methodology and understand exactly how the study was performed. This is also where data collection becomes important. Depending on the nature of the study, data may come from surveys, it may come from interviews, experiments, public databases, clinical records, or previously published literature. The key is to ensure that the data sources are reliable, relevant, and appropriate for answering the research question. In recent years, you see, AI has become increasingly useful in supporting data collection and analysis. Natural language processing algorithms are there now, and it can process large volumes of text. We have machine learning algorithms, they can identify the patterns in complex data sets, and automated systems that can, accelerate the entire stuff. So, however, no matter how sophisticated this technology becomes, the quality of the conclusions will always depend on the quality of the underlying data. So, you see, this brings us to the part of data management. So, data management is one of the most overlooked aspects of research, yet it is one of the most important. I have seen, several researchers lose months of work because files were poorly organized, data sets were mislabeled, or important records, they're not properly backed up. So good data management begins with organization. Researchers, they should establish clear naming conversations, maintain detailed records, document data processing steps, and ensure that all data sets, they are securely stored. This becomes especially important when working with large projects and multiple collaborators. So every record should be kept, because often you see that when you are submitting a research, the researchers, the peer reviewers, the editors, they can ask n number of data from you. So it's very, very important to maintain even the smallest piece of data that you have generated while doing the work. So AI tools can greatly, help us in this process. We have modern systems that can automatically classify the documents. It can label the data sets, organize the files, and even identify inconsistencies in the data. So another powerful application is AI in pattern recognition. So one of the reasons machine learning has become so influential is because of its ability to detect relationships that may not be obvious to, human observers. So large data sets all often contain the hidden patterns that are difficult to identify manually. For example, machine learning algorithms, it can identify disease biomarkers, detect subtle trends in environment data, classify the images, or predict outcomes based on historical observations. So we have several tools for this. We have TensorFlow, we have scikit-learn, and we have AutoML platforms. This has provided us capabilities increasingly accessible to researchers from diverse disciplines. But it is important to remember that the findings and a pattern does not automatically mean that discovering a meaningful scientific relationship. See, whatever AI is giving us is just an algorithm. It's an algorithm based expression, it's an algorithm based data. So we have to use our own experience, we have to use our own efficiency to understand whether that data is valid or not, and what is the data totally valid, or are there any pitfalls in the data. So we should be very carefully looking, we should very carefully and you know analyze each and every step that we are doing and the data that is being generated from the AI. So you see, many students then tell me that they know their research well, but they struggle to convert their ideas into a manuscript. So you have a large amount of data, you have all sorts, you have completed the entire workflow. Now the biggest question is how you will arrange everything and you will come up with one proper manuscript. So one of the biggest advantages of AI is that it can help overcome the fear of a blank page. So, the starting is always the difficult. It is very difficult how you begin. Once you start writing, then it becomes easier. but the biggest problem is to start, right? So before writing, I recommend creating a clear outline. You can think of an outline as the skeleton of this manuscript. So this will provide a structure, and it will ensure the ideas how logically from one section to next you can make out some important points that will help you to totally write the manuscript. What are the important points that you will be trying to include in each and every step? So we have AI tools. We are very familiar with Chat GPT. We have Claude. They can assist in generating very good outlines based on research objectives and key findings. Now these outlines can then be refined according to the specific needs of the project. So but you see, this outline is only the beginning. Then we have to draft it, and we have to properly use this AI for drafting. So what I recommend is working section by section rather than people ask the AI to write the entire paper. So that is totally wrong. You have to work on every sections. You have to find, and you have to critically analyze and collect the data, and you have to write it. So if you just give a prompt and you think that AI will write you the entire paper, so that is actually wrong. And what the result or the output that you get, the quality is severely compromised. So you have to work one section at a time, so that it helps in improving the quality of the manuscript, and at the same time uh, it gives you some new ideas that you can put forward in the manuscript. See, for example, begin with a specific prompt for the introduction, then we can move to the methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion in similar manner. So what this helps us, you see, it allows greater control over the content, and it ensures that scientific accuracy is maintained throughout the manuscript. Most importantly, we have to remember that AI generated text should never be treated as the final version. Think of it as a first draft that requires critical review, revision, and refinement. The strongest manuscripts emerge when this AI efficiency is combined with the human expertise, creativity, and scientific judgment. So you see, we can't totally depend on a machine and some algorithms to give us some data, and we can't just blindly go forward with that data. So we have to critically analyze each and every step, so that whatever data we are getting, we can find out if there are any changes to be made. So you have to depend on yourself and on your expertise for that. So now we talk about some basic writing tools. You have seen that we have Chat GPT, we have Claude. So when people hear the term AI in research, the first tool that comes to our mind is Chat GPT. So Chat GPT, it has become a very popular because see, it can assist in brainstorming, literature summaries, manuscript outlines, content refinement, and even generating potential research ideas. And personally, I find it particularly useful when I am entering a new research area and want a quick conceptual overview before diving into the primary literature. There is another tool, obviously, it is Claude. So one advantage of Claude is its ability to maintain, see, context across longer documents. This makes it especially useful when working on large review articles or lengthy manuscripts where consistency is very important. Then we have Jasper AI. It's another platform designed specifically for content generation. While it is commonly used in marketing and content creation, it also, offers support for academic writing. So regardless of, you can note down these tools, and you can explore one by one, and you see whichever tool you find useful, that tool you can incorporate in your research. But you have to understand one stuff, that regardless of whichever tool you use, there is one principle that you should always remember: AI should assist your writing, and it should never ever replace your thinking. So keep this in mind. The scientific contribution, you see, it comes from us. Whatever we are writing, it is we are contributing. The interpretation of results must come from you. We should understand the originality of the manuscript. It should come from us. AI, obviously, it is helping us to organize the ideas, but it should never replace the scientific expertise. Then once a manuscript begins to take shape, another important aspect and one of the biggest challenges that we face in scientific writing is referencing, citation. So in my experience as an editor and a reviewer, citation related problems are among the most common issues encountered during manuscript evaluation. So it's a very, very big problem, nowadays that we are facing. Sometimes references, they are incomplete. Sometimes citation styles are not proper. Occasionally, authors even cite papers that they have never actually read. So proper citation is much more than a technical requirement. It is a fundamental aspect of academic integrity. You have to understand the validity. You have to understand whether the citation fits in this place. We can't just use fake citations and move forward. So this compromises the entire quality of the manuscript. So citations acknowledge the contributions of the previous researchers and allow readers to verify the information presented in the manuscript. Today, several excellent tools are there. We have Zotero. So it's one of my personal favorite because it is free, it is easy to use, and it is highly effective for organizing reference. Then we have Mendeley, that is again another widely used platform that combines reference management with research networking features. So as we are, moving forward, you just keep note of these tools. So you can go and check these tools one by one and try to, do the expertise. You gain expertise of these tools. This will help you in your research. So then comes Mendeley. So Mendeley, as I said, is again a very good platform. It's a free tool. You can surely explore it. Then EndNote, it remains one of the most popular among researchers managing very large reference libraries, particularly in institutions that provides access to the software. It's a costly software, but if you have access to it, it really is a very, very, very good software because you can, manage very big libraries. You can easily cite the references, and in seconds you can change the style of the references. So AI's tools can also assist in formatting the citations, as I said, generating reference list, and we see it also helps us organizing the sources. So however, what I feel, and I strongly advise the researchers to verify the AI generated citations. One of those limitations of AI citations and systems is the tendency to occasionally generate references that look very authentic, but they never exist. Therefore, the verification of each reference is very, very important. See, as we move forward, I would like to discuss what I consider the three most principles, you know, responsible for AI assisted research writing. So you see, the first principle is to maintain your voice. Many researchers, they become very excited when they see these AI generated polishing paragraphs. However, if every manuscript sounds like it was written by AI, the unique perspective of the researcher is lost. You always need to give it a human touch, which makes your manuscript a unique one, because everyone can generate some written stuff from a machine and a software. But whatever input that you are putting makes your paper unique. So the first principle is always to maintain your voice. Many researchers, they are overexcited. So your experience, your interpretation, and your scientific reasoning are what that make your work very valuable. And AI should help you communicate those ideas in a more effective and not replace them. Then the second, you see, you should always verify the AI outputs. Never assume that an AI generated statement is correct simply because it sounds convincing. Always verify the facts, references, statistics, and scientific claims using reliable primary sources. And third principle is to iterate and refine it. A manuscript rarely becomes excellent after a single draft. We have to check it again and again, a couple of readings, then finding out the uh, relevant gaps in the paper. Then, so good writing, it's a long process. Each round of revision improves clarity, accuracy, and the coherence. So these three principles, maintaining your voice, verifying the information, and continuously refining your work, it will help ensure that AI remains a very, very helpful tool rather than just a source of problems. So now as we understand how AI assists in writing process, now let us discuss some of the important parts that we often take for granted, that is the abstract and the introduction. So whenever I receive a manuscript for review, the abstract is the first section that I read. Within a few minutes, I often form an initial impression of the paper's quality. A strong abstract should clearly answer 4 questions. So as a reviewer and as an editor, what I look for in a paper is, I ask, what was the problem that was being investigated? This is the first problem that I ask, and whether it is there or not. And how was the study conducted? The second question. The third, what are the main findings? And finally, why are those findings important? So these 4 questions, they become the pillar of how we analyze the manuscript and whether we want to take it forward for peer review or reject it in the initial stage. So many authors make the mistake of writing, vague abstracts that provide very little useful information. Readers, they should be able to understand the essence of the study simply by reading the abstract. The abstract is a very, very important part. Whether you are writing a research paper or a review paper, the abstract plays a very, very important role. So you have to very carefully choose every word, because you see there is always a word count or the word limit, like 250 words or 300 words. So whatever words you are writing, you have to choose every word of the abstract very, very carefully. Then the introduction, it serves a different purpose. The introduction creates the scientific context of the study. It explains what is already known. It gives us an idea of the background, what we don't know, what remains unknown, and what the current study is necessary and why we're doing the study, obviously. I often describe the introduction as a bridge between the existing knowledge and a new knowledge. So you see, a well-written introduction gradually leads the reader towards the research question and demonstrates why the study deserves attention. See, once the introduction establishes the context, the manuscript moves to the result section. So the result section should focus on presenting evidence. That is obvious, but the way that you organize the manuscripts, beginning from the abstract, then introduction or the review of literature, then you come to the materials and methods, then you have results, and then you have discussion section, then you go on to the conclusion section. This moves like a workflow. This moves like a proper workflow. So one of the most common mistakes made by young researchers is mixing results with discussion. So I have seen this in a large number of papers where the researchers, they don't write a separate discussion, they just mix it with the results. So this is actually a very wrong process to follow, and as a editor, we immediately reject the paper. So what we look forward is what is the uniqueness in the paper and how well the paper is presented. So the purpose of the result section is to find out and clearly portray those results. Whatever findings you have through the work, how clearly you are portraying that through the graphs, figures, you have statistical analysis. How well is your data uh, being able to communicate the idea of your work? So good visualizations, they are very, very important. In many cases, a well-designed figure can communicate information more effectively than several paragraphs of text. So always the key question is maintaining the clarity in the entire work. So readers should be able to understand what was observed without any confusion. So the after you see whenever we talk about the results, it should be maintained in a very clear flow, and it should contain different graphs, different figures, different charts, which help us understand what were the main findings from this. So you see, we have several platforms that help us interpret our data, analyze our data, and AI has made it obviously very simple and easier for us to do the same. So we can check out different AI platforms. We can that helps us to organize the data and generate the graphs and all in a beautiful manner. Then after the results, what is most important is the discussion. The discussion is where the researchers, demonstrate the scientific maturity. Many inexperienced authors, they simply repeat the results in the discussion section. However, the purpose of the discussion is not repetition. The purpose is interpretation. This is where we explain why the results matter. How do the findings compare with the previous studies? Do they support the existing theories? Do they challenge the current understanding? What limitations should be considered? What future research directions emerge from these findings? These are the types of questions that should be addressed in a strong discussion section. A thoughtful discussion transforms data into knowledge. Before submitting a manuscript, another crucial step remains, the proofreading and plagiarism. So this is one of the crucial items that we have to very, very carefully, look. So we have AI powered proofreading tools. We have Grammarly, we have Pro Writing Aid, Quillboard. They can help improve the grammar, sentence structure, readability, and overall writing integrity. So these tools, they are particularly useful in researchers whose first language is not English, and at the same time it helps us maintain the academic integrity. So these are very essential tools that you should always check. And then comes the plagiarism. So you see plagiarism detection platforms such as Turnitin, Authenticate, and Copyleaks, they help these researchers identify the areas of excessive similarity and compromised originality. However, I would like to emphasize that the goal is not necessary to achieve zero similarity. Scientific writing naturally contains technical terminology and standard methodology descriptions. The real objective is to ensure that ideas are properly attributed and that the manuscript represents original scholarly work. Right? So, see, as we are approaching towards the conclusion of this workshop, I would like to reflect on a broader impact of AI in research. You see, the integration of AI in academic workflows, it has transformed nearly every stage of the research process. Researchers can now identify literature more efficiently, organize information more effectively, analyze the data more quickly, and draft the manuscripts more productively than ever before. So the true value of AI, it lies not in automation itself, but in what that automation enables you to do. You see, by reducing the time spent on the repetitive tasks, AI allows researchers to devote more attention to creativity. We have time to do a proper critical thinking, innovation, and scientific discovery. Mastering AI is therefore not about learning a single tool. It is about developing a workflow, that combines technological efficiency with scientific rigor. This brings us what we call our AI research roadmap. So you see, many participants may feel overwhelmed by the large number of available AI tools, but what my advice is, always start small. Choose one tool at a time and learn it thoroughly. Perhaps begin with ChatGPT for literature exploration. Perhaps you can use Elicit for evidence synthesis. You can adopt Zotero for reference management. Integrate that tool in your workflow and you have to be very comfortable while using it. Once you gain confidence, you try to gradually expand your toolkit. Remember that sustainable improvement happens step by step. No, you can't master all the AI and everything in a single week. Instead, you should always focus on building habits that improve your research productivity over time. Right? You have to always follow a step-by-step process. And then before final concluding, I would like to share a final set of best practices that you should always follow in this entire lecture. Whatever we have told you, you see that we have made our work a lot easier, but there is always some stuff that you have to keep in mind: the way, the legality, the originality, and the best practices that you should always follow. So first, you should always disclose the AI use that as per the journal policies. Always verify the information that has been generated by AI. Try to maintain the ownership of your intellectual contribution, and most importantly, never allow convenience to replace the critical thinking. You see, AI is an extraordinary tool, but scientific responsibility always remains with the researcher. And as researchers, we're ultimately accountable for the accuracy, integrity, and quality of our work. To conclude this workshop, I'd like to leave you with a final thought. AI will not replace researchers. However, researchers who learn to use AI effectively may outperform those who do not. The future of research belongs to individuals who can combine this scientific expertise with technological capability. So I believe that today's session has shown that writing a research paper is not an impossible task. With a clear workflow, a structured approach, and with responsible use of AI tools, the publication process becomes far more manageable and efficient. So thank you very much for your attention, participation, and enthusiasm throughout this workshop. I hope you find the session informative and practical. I encourage each of you to start applying these strategies in your own research projects. Every publication begins with a single idea, and every successful researcher begins with a willingness to learn. Thank you once again.